Well, hi. Welcome back from lunch. I don't know. I thought it was another fantastic meal at Diamond Mountain. Thank you very much. Katie's a great cook. Next, I have the absolute honor to introduce Perin McNelis, who is the Native Plant Program Manager for Borderlands Restoration Network. Sky Harvest had the pleasure to work with Perin last year at Diamond Mountain as we made thousands and thousands of seed balls with hundreds of thousands of seeds for 30 different species of flowering plants and shrubs and trees that she picked out for us. So Perin helped us to understand how and where to plant them. And I promise you, it is through her enthusiasm here, her knowledge and her passion that cultivated the courage we needed to take on the task of desert lands reforestation. So thank you, Perin, forever. And please help me welcome her.
Thank you, Kat. And thank you, everybody at Sky Harvest, for organizing this and for having me here today. I'm excited to talk to everybody about native seeds. All right, so again, my name is Perin McNelis. I'm the Native Plant Program Manager at Borderlands Restoration Network, and I'm going to talk about stewarding native seeds in the Southwestern US. Slide. So first, we need to understand what a native plant is. Native plants are those that have evolved in the places they live over thousands of years. Plants are usually considered native if they were not introduced to a landscape by humans, and if they have been present since before colonization. Native plants have co-evolved with animals where they live and are usually depended upon as a critical source for food and shelter. I'll slow down. Slide. And so that brings us to seeds. Seeds are plants. They are living, breathing beings. The embryo inside of a seed is an immature plant with all of the parts of an adult plant. Seeds are a result of plant sex and cross-pollination. So seeds are a very important source of genetic diversity. Slide. So then, why are native plants and seeds important? Healthy native plant communities are the foundation for ecosystem function and diversity. Plants provide a myriad of ecosystem services, and those include soil stabilization, food and habitat for animals, recharging aquifers, and they provide resources that sustain human communities and economies. Additionally, native plants are thought to be an important buffer against climate change. They support ecosystem recovery after climate-related impacts, such as fires or droughts. And thus, native plants and seeds are considered the cornerstone of ecological restoration. Slide. So how do we preserve and steward our native seeds and plants? Preservation of plants and seeds can happen in a few different ways. Preservation of plants and seeds can happen within the habitat where they naturally occur. So for example, protected landscapes like national parks, or activities like excluding grazing animals so that plants can thrive. Or preservation of plants and seeds can happen outside of the habitat where they naturally occur. Examples of that are botanical gardens and seed banks. So that would be taking plant and seed material to help preserve it when the habitat is being destroyed, and then using that material to revive the habitat afterwards. And then there can be a combination of preservation of plants in their natural habitat as well as outside of their natural habitat. So that could be protecting plants where they live in the wild, while also saving seeds and growing those seeds in your garden. And that brings us to the last type of preservation, and that's ecological restoration, which refers to activities that aim to return ecosystem function and health to a landscape that has been disturbed or thrown off balance. Slide. An ecological restoration or habitat restoration often starts at the foundation, the bottom of the food chain, which are plants. But native plants, for one, are very important to use in ecological restoration because of all of the relationships they support, because they've co-evolved with the other living beings in that habitat. Additionally, within a native plant species, there are something called ecotypes. And ecotypes refer to local populations of a species that are specifically adapted to their habitat. So, for successful planting or revegetation or restoration, you will have more success using seeds of native plants that are sourced locally, as opposed to seeds from native plants of the same species that are maybe from somewhere far away. Slide. And that's what we specialize in at Borderlands Restoration Network. We specialize in local plant materials to use in local restoration projects in Southern Arizona. So our mission is to grow a restorative economy by rebuilding healthy ecosystems, restoring habitat for plants and wildlife, and reconnecting our border communities to the land through shared learning. Slide. So Borderlands Restoration Network works in the Sky Islands or Madrean Archipelago ecoregion. And this is considered a binational biodiversity hotspot area because it has very tall mountains that are forested, like islands in the sky, surrounded by seas of desert and grassland. So there's a dramatic habitat gradient that allows for an incredible diversity. Slide. So despite the incredible diversity in southern Arizona and northern Mexico, northern Sonora, there's been a lot of historic mismanagement and other human activity that has led to seasonal soil erosion, as you can see here. Soil erosion, or loss of soil and loss of vegetation, has a domino effect on other parts of the ecosystem. So it affects vegetation cover, the ability for plants to survive. It affects water availability. And it affects habitat for wildlife. Slide. So ecological restoration activities are what Borderlands Restoration Network uses to address some of these challenges in our arid Southwestern ecosystems. And we address those challenges in a few program areas. We do erosion control and watershed restoration. We do native plant material production and habitat restoration with plants. And then we do education to connect border communities to their home landscapes to build a culture of care and land stewardship. Slide. So the Native Plant Program at Borderlands Restoration Network aims to promote biodiversity by providing access to restoration quality native plant materials. Restoration quality means genetically diverse and locally sourced. So some of the services that we offer are native seed collection and cleaning and storage. We grow native plants at our nursery facility. We farm native plants for seed. And then we plant our native plants and seed out into the landscape for restoration and revegetation. And then we provide various workshops to the community. Our goal is to get people excited about native plants, to get them to love them and appreciate them, and grow the movement with us. And here's our team. Slide. So all activities in our program start with seed, right? That's the starting point for all native plants. And that starts with wild collection. Slide. Yeah, so wild collection is harvesting seeds in the wild. And I will break that down for you all. Slide. So for wild seed collection, you first start out with making a list of what species you want to collect. The species on your list depends on what your goals are. You might want to be collecting plants for hummingbird nectar, or maybe for bat habitat, or maybe just for erosion control. Once you have your list of species, you can go out into the field and look for healthy, robust populations of those species. And then you pick which populations look healthy and can sustain a seed harvest. Slide. Once you have identified the populations from which you would like to collect seed, you slowly over time observe those plants. This is like building up a relationship with the plants. You're watching, when are they growing? When are they dormant? When do they start to flower? When are they finishing flowering? And when are they starting to go to seed? So when are they getting crispy? When are the seeds ripe? Slide. This is an example of how different a plant can look when it's in flower versus when it's setting its seed. So on the left-hand side, you have desert globe mallow. On the bottom, it's flowering. Bright orange, soft petals. On the top, it has gone to seed. You can see it's dry, crispy. The seeds are dark. And on the right, you have a fall blooming plant. On the top, it's blooming. On the bottom, it's in seed. So it's all about making these slow observations. Slide. And really what you're looking for is that key moment when the plant is in its natural state of dispersal. That means when the plant is ready to disperse its seeds, to send its babies out into the wild, that means that those seeds are fully developed and mature, and that they are more likely to grow. So that is the perfect time to collect. And this is a milkweed, beloved milkweed, super important plant for monarch butterflies. Slide. So before you collect seed, it's important to get permission from the landowner, depending where you are. It can be as simple as asking a neighbor for verbal permission, or if you're on public land in the United States, you need to get permits sometimes. But even more important than that is understanding how you can harvest seed while minimizing harm to the parent population. We use a set of protocols that are very simple. And this poem here is a similar set of protocols. Know the ways of the ones who take care of you so that you may take care of them. Introduce yourself. Be accountable as the one who comes asking for life. Ask permission before taking. Abide by the answer. Never take the first. Never take the last. Take only what you need. Take only which is given. Never take more than half. Leave some for others. Harvest in a way that minimizes harm. Use it respectfully. Never waste what you have taken. Share. Give thanks for what you have been given. Give a gift in reciprocity for what you have taken. Sustain the ones who sustain you, and the earth will last forever. This is from Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants by Robin Wall Kimmerer. It's a really fantastic book. I recommend it to everybody. And this poem is a very beautiful version of the protocols that we follow at Borderlands Restoration Network, which are that we make sure the population is healthy and robust before deciding to collect. We don't take more than half of what's available on an individual plant and no more than 20% in the population. We collect from as many individuals as possible. So smaller amount from fewer plants versus a lot of seed from only 5 plants. And that is to build genetic diversity into the harvest. And we tread lightly when we go out into wildlands for seed harvest. Slide. So here are some of the tools that we use for seed collection. Very simple, 5-gallon bucket, some garden snips. Gloves are important to protect your hands. Paper bags because they're breathable. You don't want condensation in your seeds. And a pen to write some notes about where you collected and what you collected. Slide. And then, as I said, at Borderlands Restoration Network, we specialize in locally collected seed. And so it's very important that the provenance information or the location information associated with each collection stays with that collection. This is an example of our database file for a seed collection. At the very least, we do elevation, mountain range, watershed, date, of course, and biotic community, which means Madrean evergreen woodland, or is it a riparian gallery forest? It's helpful to write down some other plants growing around it, because, as I said before, the seed from this place where you made the notes will do much better if it goes back to a place that is very similar. Slide. Once we've done our seed collection, we bring our harvest back to our seed barn and cold storage for processing. And that's what you see here. That trailer is a walk-in cooler, walk-in cold seed bank. Slide. And then the next step is processing and cleaning and storing the seeds that we harvested. And here is a couple photos of seed cleaning. Slide. So the first step of processing and cleaning seeds is getting them to be dry and getting them to be pest-free, so no insects. We usually lay seeds out on tarps or in trays so that there's a lot of surface area exposed to the air so they can dry. And this is also useful for letting bugs crawl out. And we often put a fan on the seeds or a dehumidifier. Slide. The next step is cleaning seeds. So that means separating the seed from as much of the non-seed plant material as possible. So removing stems, removing leaves, removing twigs. We mostly do this using screens, like the ones on the right. And sometimes we do winnowing, which is when you separate by weight. And that's the photo on the left. Slide. Once you have removed as much of that non-seed material as possible, then you can store the seed. It's important to remove insects and to remove organic material that's not seed, because insects can eat the seed, and twigs and leaves hold a lot of moisture. Even when they seem dry, they oftentimes can hold moisture. And for seed storage, you need conditions that are similar to a pantry: cool, dark, and dry. Moisture can cause mold and rot. And if you want to store your seeds for multiple years, then you want to provide them with the conditions that will help them maintain their viability for as long as possible. You can also plant seeds right away, and then it doesn't matter if they have leaves and twigs. So this is just if you're storing them, saving them for later. Slide. So a lot of the seeds that we collect at Borderlands Restoration Network are used for nursery production. Here you can see acorns from oaks that we grew in little tubes, and on the right they're being planted. Our nursery facility has 5 structures full of native plants in pots. And those pots are used for restoration planting or for retail. So we sell plants to home gardeners. Using seed to grow plants is really great when you can kind of control the conditions and baby the plants to ensure that you're going to get something to grow. Using plants in restoration is a little bit tricky, because if you don't have irrigation, they will dry up and die. Whereas seeds can just sit. They can like lay in wait until the right conditions come for them to germinate. But growing seeds at home is so fun, and I recommend it to everybody. It's very therapeutic. It's a great way to learn your native plants just from slow repetition. Growing plants from seed is a really great way to understand the thousands of years of work that it took generations before us to breed plants, to breed our food. And it's a great way to understand the mechanics of seeds, to understand the complicated survival strategies that they have evolved to protect themselves until the conditions will support their growth. Slide. So the other thing that we use our seed for is for farmed seed production. At Borderlands Restoration Network, we have a 1.5 acre farmed plot where we have planted over 20 species of native plants with the purpose of amplifying their seeds. And to explain what I mean by that, if you think about a handful of seeds, a tiny little handful of seeds, depending on the size of those seeds, that could be 50,000 seeds in your hand or more. And depending on the viability of those seeds, each one of those could become a plant. And so if you start with one seed that becomes one plant, and then that one plant can produce another handful of seeds, you can exponentially increase the seed available to then use for restoration. And this is really important because there is a really big need for seed. Seed is ideal for wildlands restoration. Seeds have the genetic diversity to be able to face changing conditions. And wild seed is very expensive and difficult to collect. So using the seed from the wild and establishing it in a farm, all of the seed that comes off of that first generation of plants that were grown from wild seed maintains those wild genetics for the rest of their lifespan. And so you get that locally sourced ecotypes of native seed, but in a setting where you can source them much quicker, much easier on the body. And in the United States, or globally really, as agriculture is becoming more concentrated in fewer hands, agricultural land is being abandoned. And as agricultural land is abandoned, oftentimes the disturbance that was left behind is perfect place for encroachment by invasive species. Or it can result in dust, just a, dust bowl effect. So reverting abandoned agricultural land to productive native seed farm that is essentially a native grassland in our case, or a native habitat that is also producing something that can be used for restoration, is a really fantastic way to address the issue of abandoned ag land. So that's what we're doing here on this farm that used to be an alfalfa farm, and now we are hoping to turn it all into a seed farm. Slide. And then finally, one of the big uses for native seeds is directly into revegetation projects. On the left, you have our watershed restoration crew using seed pellets, which is a very ancient technique of combining clay and compost to protect seeds from predation, and allowing them to sit until enough moisture dissolves the clay. And on the right, you have a hydro seeder, which is what you see lots of cities and towns use on roadside. And it suspends seeds in a liquid and drills them into the ground. And it's very effective. And so we use our seed that we collect, we use it to grow native plants for home gardeners and for restoration projects that have irrigation. We use it to establish farmed seed increase plots. And then we use it directly in revegetation in wildlands. Slide. So finally, I mentioned previously that there is this massive growing need for seed. This graphic is kind of depressing, I apologize. This looks at acres burned in the United States over a 40-year period. And as you can see, the fires in the United States, wildfires, have grown and they're continuing to grow. Especially in the Western United States, in arid landscapes, like in the Southwestern US, where I am. Wildfires are increasing in regards to frequency and intensity. So you have these very, very hot, very intense burns that are happening more often than they did historically. And so as larger areas are being faced with really severe impacts of climate change, there is this need for restoring those, for emergency rehabilitation of landscapes before too much soil erosion and encroachment by invasive species. And so usually what that means, the perfect solution for that is native seed, locally sourced, locally adapted native seed. But we can barely keep up with the need for seed with wild collection and farmed seed. And so there's a push nationally, I would argue internationally, for more native plant programs, for more native seed farms. And this can be on a community scale, on a watershed scale, but we need all hands on deck. And that means I like to close with this, because Borderlands Restoration Network does this work on a medium to large scale. We're working with big landscapes. We're working with Forest Service and other public land agencies. But we need all hands on deck. And so if we are to move forward in the face of climate change, we need to cultivate this culture of care and of stewardship of our native plants and seeds. And that includes all of you building relationships with your local flora to appreciate and love the services they provide to you and your non-human kin, to observe and understand their cycles, to collect seed and save seed, to preserve genetic diversity and biodiversity, and then to cultivate that seed in your home garden to keep the life cycles going. I really believe that everybody has a role to play in preserving our seed. Slide. I think that's it. Yeah, thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Perin, for this beautiful talk. I would like to pose to the audience here on site any questions. Please come forward and ask directly. Nobody moving? Yes, please come, Lisa.
So if we wanted to do exactly what you said, is to start propagating some of these native seeds in our own home environs, where can we get those seeds? I assume from Borderlands, but yeah, I'd like to know where to start.
Are you in Arizona?
General.
What was that?
I'm in both. Arizona. I go between Tucson and a little community called Hillsboro in southwestern New Mexico near Truth or Consequences. So it's a grassland going into oak grassland and up in a pinyon in our watershed.
Oh, beautiful. Yes, so you could get seeds from us if you wanted to, or plants, and they would be appropriate for your area because we're in a similar ecoregion, similar elevation range. For people that are further, I would recommend you do some research for native plant programs, so nurseries or restoration groups, but also just talking with your neighbors and looking at other people that have properties and asking if you can collect seed from them or share seed or trade seed, and then just start trying to grow it. A lot of times there's a learning curve, but there's no such thing as a green thumb or not a green thumb. Some people just have killed more plants and learned from it than other people. And it's like, you have to do it to learn. So that's where I would recommend for people that are a little further. But yeah, for New Mexico, you could get seeds from us.
A lot of the neighbors are growing absolutely the scariest things. So
Yeah.
the people who are also of the same mindset. And also, so this goes back to doing wildland collections. Like you said, there's also Forest Service, the kind of the permits that, that whole bag of worms.
Yeah. And I know for Forest Service in the US, I think you could reach out to your local Forest Service office and ask. Usually, you can collect seed in a small quantity for personal use. You usually have to get the permits if you're going to do resale or if you're going to grow plants that you're going to sell the plants with. But if you wanted to collect it for your own education and growing in your garden, I think it's just a matter of doing a small collection. And you can ask your Forest Service biologist or whoever is at your local office.
Thank you, Perin. Lisa is nodding. Obviously, your answer satisfied her question. We have one question from the online participants, and the question is if she can come and visit you.
Yes, Rita, I see. Yes, you can totally come and visit. Should I put my email in the chat box? You can always email me. Okay, I'll do that. I know it was on the last slide, but I feel like we're on the first slide. Yeah, if you want to email us, we like love having visitors. Where would you be coming from, Rita?
You are traveling?
What was it? I couldn't hear, sorry. Oh, from Whetstone, you're so close. Yeah, of course, you could definitely come and visit us. I'll put in my email in the chat box. And we do even have, we have a couple nursery volunteer days that are pretty fun. It's like a small group of older people that are local, mostly like retired folks, and they just pot up plants all day. Very therapeutic, like I said, everybody should be enjoying plants and building relationships with them. So that would be a fun one.
Perin, I would like to show you the on-site audience.
Oh, hi everybody. Oh, and there's Caleb.
Programs.
Hi guys.
And I try to encourage them to ask more questions.
It's okay. I hope I spoke slowly enough. I know that I have a tendency to speak really fast, so I tried to go real slow. Hopefully that was good.
I have a question for you, Sunam. Could we all come to Diamond Mountain again and harvest seeds here? Okay. Perin and her partner Francesca came out and walked me through the landscape, as well as the Apache botanical elder. And Diamond Mountain has a great variety of biodiversity in the flora here on the property. And well, no, maybe we can start talking about a seed bank or some other support system for you.
That would be fun. Yeah, you guys are in such a beautiful spot. I remember we saw Quadamundi, and that was really exciting. Yeah, it would be really fun to do that. Oh wait, I can't hear you now.
Yes, I bow to your service to the world, to the flora
Thanks.
and fauna, to habitats everywhere. Thank you, Perin, and
Thank
thank you for
Dad.
being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Our group, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in person, I hope soon.
Sounds great. Thank you, everybody.
We're going to have another fabulous speaker. Gosh, what a lineup, huh? We're going to be hearing from Twyla Casador, and she's from the San Carlos Apache tribe, and she's a member on how the environmental degradation affects the local people and how the people can all participate and benefit from ecological restoration. So it'll be interesting to hear the Apache perspective on how to take care of this problem that we're all sharing and helping restore. So thank you all for today, and I hope you have a good rest, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Kat. Thanks, everybody. Bye.